City Controller Brad Lander, who's also currently a candidate for mayor, was in Manhattan to escort several immigrants from a federal building. He has been doing this for weeks now, by the way. Like I said, he's going to join me on set in just a moment. Today, when federal agents in plain clothes tried to arrest one of those immigrants he was escorting, Lander locked arms with the immigrant and just demanded to see a warrant for the man's arrest.
What's your name? What's your name?
Out of the way. You have a judicial warrant. Show me the face. You have a judicial warrant. Give me your order. You have a judicial warrant. Stop pushing. Do you have a judicial warrant?
Can I see the judicial warrant?
You have the warrant. You don't have a warrant.
I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it? Sir, where is the warrant?
I have my hand here.
I would let go. I need the warrant. Let go. The warrant.
Let's go. Take it back. Take it back.
You don't have authority. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
Look at the men who escalated that encounter, who handcuffed and arrested Lander in that way. As one Reuters reporter, Michael Derby, later asked, based on how these men are dressed, how would you know who they are working for, what their authority is? DHS claimed on social media New York City Controller Brad Lander was arrested for assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer. But we all saw the footage. That did not happen. In fact, according to the fantastic nonprofit reporting outlet The City, who was there in the hallway at the time, one of the reporters in the room, quote, had overheard one agent say to another minutes before Lander's arrest, "Do you want to arrest the controller?" Okay? This is what the beginnings of a police state looks like, what it sounds like. And here's the thing to understand. Donald Trump's campaign promise of mass deportations of millions, 10 to 13 million people, was always fundamentally a totalitarian project. There is simply no way to pull it off but to construct a police state that doesn't just create misery and suffering for immigrants. It fundamentally must also be an existential threat to American democracy. And we're at the very beginning of this project, and look what it looks like already. And I'm joined now by New York City Controller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander, his first TV interview since being released from detention just a little while ago. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
Whew, I feel angry. I feel sad. I wanted to see Edgardo be able to get out of the building. I'm going to be fine. I lost a button on my jacket, but I've got a good lawyer. I'll sleep in my bed tonight. He's in ICE detention. He has no lawyer. He's been stripped of status and due process.
So when you talk, what were you doing? In what building was it, and what were you doing in that hallway with him?
Yeah, so that was what we call the Federal Building, 26 Federal Plaza, and there's immigration hearings in it. This is the third week I've gone. And what started about 3 weeks ago is that the Department of Homeland Security has been moving essentially to strip people of their status. They were supposed to, they filed asylum applications for the most part, and they should get a hearing on whether they've got credible fear of violence or repression. Now DHS is stripping them of that. And then as soon as the case is over, they don't even know what's happening. And, you know, they don't speak English for the most part. They've had some translation. Then they walk out of the courtroom, and as they walk to the elevator, ICE agents grab them up.
So what happens is the lawyers for the government say we want to drop the case,
That's
right?
right.
Like we don't want. These are people who are showing up for their court date.
Yeah, they
to be
crossed
clear,
at the border and checked in.
They checked in,
and then they got
showed
a court
up at the court date. They showed up. The government says to drop it, and then the ICE folks nab them
as soon as they walk toward the elevator lobby. And so what we've been doing the last 3 weeks is observing in court, trying to advise, give them a little bit of, you should object, like you have an appeal right. And then when they walk out, we just, walk arm in arm. And 5 of the 7 families I've walked out with over the last 3 weeks, we were able to get in the elevator and exit the building, and they could go back home to their families. And they were shaking in the elevator. And when they got out, I just felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing as an elected official who cares about the rule of law. And these are New Yorkers. But yes, then today, in two cases, a guy named Zed, who speaks Yoruba, and then Edgardo, who is in that picture. We're not so lucky.
So what happened? Was Zed before this?
Zed was before.
So what
this.
happened there?
Our arms were not linked quite so tightly.
And they just grabbed him?
Just grabbed him.
Okay, so then this time, you do link arms with Edgardo. Now, I don't want to be I'm a journalist, so I have to be like very factual here. My understanding is they don't actually need a judicial warrant, they need an administrative warrant, but they can also act on probable cause. You're asking for a warrant as they're grabbing Edgardo, and what are they saying or doing?
I mean, you can see it on the video. They indicated they had a warrant, but did not show it.
Right. What do you say to people who say that they have the authority, that you're essentially obstructing the law here?
I mean, they've changed the rules until about 3 weeks ago. If you did what you were supposed to do, you would eventually get your credible fear hearing. And when the rules are changed, and even people who do what they're supposed to can't count on not being scooped up and deported, that's bad for everyone when people don't think the rules matter. And that really is what authoritarianism is, when the rules can be changed at any minute and you can't count, even if you do what you're supposed to, file your asylum application, come to court on your court date. Of course, people won't start doing that. So all we want is the due process that people are supposed to get.
So I'm struck, we played Alex Padilla. These are happening in different places in different circumstances. One is at a press conference. I'm kind of struck by how rough it is, I got to say. And partly is law enforcement officials are trained that they need to use force to subdue people and as a sort of safety mechanism. So there is a kind of training here. But I mean, both in the case of Padilla and the case of you, it looked like you were getting kind of roughed up.
I mean, you saw it on the video, and it kept going well after we were separated.
Did it feel like you were getting roughed up?
I mean, it was, yes.
It was not gentle.
No, it was not gentle.
So then what happened after they took you, after you disappear?
Yeah.
Where do you go and what do they tell you about why are they detaining you? What do they have you for?
So, honestly, I heard very little. And of course, the case, they have not brought charges, but apparently the U.S. Attorney's Office says they're still reviewing the case. So I don't know exactly what they will come back with. DHS put that preposterous statement out that everyone could see is not what is happening on the video. But they didn't tell me any of that. They did take me to a detention room. They took the cuffs off, and I just sat for 3.5 hours in a detention room. Part of what's fascinating
is but they didn't tell you? You're just in there, there's nothing?
Nothing.
Come on.
I'm telling you, I sat for 3.5 hours in a detention room.
But nothing. I mean, and they know exactly who you are. They know what they're doing.
They do.
They knew who you were.
They knew who I was. There's no doubt they knew I was the controller and, talked to me about that.
So, and then what happened after 3.5 hours?
Well, first I got to say about who two of the agents were, because this was kind of remarkable in itself. The arresting officer is a Pakistani Muslim who lives in Brighton Beach, and the second officer is an Indo-Guyanese immigrant who lives in South Ozone Park in Queens. Both immigrants, so...
work them over for their vote? You try to
did, yes.
try to rank me, buddy?
You know it. I'm absolutely trying to get everybody's vote, including theirs. And look, we need a mayor.
Well, since I'm here.
I mean, look, immigrant New Yorkers, whoever they are, have a lot of the same issues. And some of that is affordable housing. And some of that is knowing that Donald Trump is coming for New York City. And we need elected officials who will stand up.
Well, but what do you, I want you to think of, what does that say to you, that the fact that the gentlemen that did this, that are there in immigration court, are themselves immigrants?
Yeah. I mean, it says to me that, what Trump is trying to do is to drive a wedge into our country. I mean, New York City, 40% of the 8 million New Yorkers are foreign-born. 50% of New Yorkers live in mixed-status households with at least one immigrant, including 1 million children. And if they think they're subject to deportation proceedings, think about what will happen. People will be afraid to come to school. People will be afraid to report crimes to the NYPD. People won't show up at their immigration hearings. So, the reason New York City is proud to have these sanctuary city laws is to say it matters when there is rule of law and due process. Of course, it matters to the people who are seeking having their asylum cases heard, but it matters to all of us.
Can I just play devil's advocate for a second? It's pretty clear that Trump in 2024 made huge gains in predominantly immigrant neighborhoods in New York City. Like, I think that's the data shows that.
Yes.
And there's some data to suggest that, actually amongst foreign-born voters was the biggest swing constituency.
Yeah.
That maybe this is what a lot of immigrants want.
I mean, I think what authoritarians are good at is giving you someone to blame. You feel precarious. Housing is so expensive here. You think you're not going to be able to stay. And when someone tells you that it's somebody else's fault, even if it's the people who got here 10 minutes after you arrived. I used to, in the city council, represent a Bangladeshi neighborhood. And yes, when I would go out there, I would hear, well, we came the right way.
Yes.
But this shows there's no right way, when these folks are doing things the right way. They did what they were supposed to. Nobody's safe like that.
All right. You mentioned the statement by DHS in which they accuse you of assaulting a police officer, or a law enforcement officer. Did you assault a law enforcement officer? Okay.
No, I mean, people can see with their own eyes the video. That's the whole video that you showed.